So the crypto markets are trading sideways right now after seeing massive liquidations across the week. With the key news events that we were facing, there was a lot of volatility, a lot of moving parts, and honestly, there's a lot of different perspectives around Bitcoin and exactly where we're going to be headed wrapping up the year, and also how Ethereum is more than likely going to keep bleeding against Bitcoin moving into December. I also want to jump through the perspectives around exactly when Bitcoin potentially could be bottoming out, if we're going to be seeing a pump, or if this is pretty much the end and we're pretty much not going to be seeing anything happen anymore. It's pretty much the weekend right now, guys. Saturday morning after the week has already ended. I want to wrap you guys up with all the events that happened as well as overall the perspectives on what is taking place. So with all that being said, let's go and jump straight into the markets and exactly what you need to be aware of. So as I said, markets are trading sideways after we wrapped up the week and saw all the crazy news events that had an effect on the market, Nvidia's earnings, multiple reportings from multiple Fed speakers, and at the end of the day, guys, it caused massive volatility. We closed out the US markets in the green, which was great to see, but at the end of the day, there's still a lot of mixed perspectives on what's going to be happening in the markets moving into next week. Now, if we jump into the price action, you can see that Bitcoin has just been on a consistent breakdown pattern, and we've been keeping up with this with the trend line that I drew in the last few weeks and how it's just pretty much been respecting this, but we have been reaching areas of support in previous areas based off of time zones that we saw in 2025 as well as overall at the end of 2024. So this is where a lot of people are anticipating that, are we already bottoming out, or are we still going to be seeing more deviations? Ethereum is following the price action around Bitcoin, so as Bitcoin dumps, Ethereum is also going to be dumping, guys, and this is something that we talked about with Benjamin Cohen and his perspective that Ethereum was going to be bleeding against Bitcoin moving into December, and how everyone is pretty much reallocating. This is showing that the altcoin market is just taking a hit with Ethereum as well, as long as Bitcoin is still stilling out all that liquidity. And Bitcoin dominance is one of the main indicators that keeps us updated on exactly where liquidity is shifting. And with this downward momentum, a lot of people are expecting that we're going to be seeing one more correction for Bitcoin dominance, hitting above that 60% region and then potentially falling back down. But all in due time, guys, will we actually see if this is what's going to happen. Now, in terms of a perspective around exactly Bitcoin and Ethereum and exactly when are we going to be bottoming out, and also is the top already in, Elise gave a great perspective on exactly how he identifies these areas and exactly what he's looking for in order to determine when we're pretty much bottomed out for Bitcoin. But it goes on to say, as I often say, a bottom does not form in the same way as a top. They are two completely opposite processes in terms of price behavior and above all volume interpretation. A top occurs when there is still apparent strengths, breakthroughs, breakouts, enthusiasm, and including liquidity, incoming liquidity, allowing the biggest players to distribute at the top, guys. In these phases, the OBV often remains positive or stable precisely because distribution occurs while the public is buying strongly. A bottom, on the other hand, is the opposite. It is not a sudden explosion, but a slow process of absorption, consolidation, and progressive loss of selling pressure. This is why the OBV is fundamental. It shows you whether sales are still draining liquidity or whether they're on the contrary. The flow is beginning to reverse silently. To date, the OBV continues to show outgoing pressure with no signs of reversal. This is why I continue to say that we do not yet have real confirmation of a bottom. Even though we are in an interesting technical area, three key levels are visible on the chart. The upper red zone, and he pretty much gives a few specific areas that he's pertaining to liquidity, the OBV, accumulation, pullbacks, and exactly the tops and the bottoms that we see, guys. And this is a really great post just talking about exactly how to deem bottoms as well as how to see tops. So this is, the understanding and perspective that a lot of analysts and traders are giving, which is why a lot of people think that we're still going to be deviating much more. But this is where you can start to do a little bit of your own analysis, draw a few specific trend lines based off of previous support and exactly where we closed and opened on other time frames. And this is where you can start to see much more of a perspective. But most people, guys, are so zoomed in, they pretty much aren't seeing a long-term perspective, and this is super important to anticipate. Now, moving into the perspectives around the markets right now, Ted has been one of the individuals that's been talking crap about exactly the markets and how we're pretty much going to be dumping even more, talking about the RSI and how it's comparing to the FTX crash right now. But one of the biggest things that he's saying over the weekend right now, literally about 49 minutes ago, he says the weekend scam pumps are incoming. And this is something that KillXBT was covering about a few hours ago, saying that we have some local liquidations appearing at 83K with short liquidations. So Killer said that, you know, we have some local liquidations appearing at 83K with short liquidations appearing at 86K. So this is where we have the heat map showing exactly potentially where we could be hitting if we hit that 83 region and then move upwards to that 86,000 region. I honestly believe we're going to hit 86,000 and then from there start a downward turn. And this kind of goes into Ted's perspective on how the weekend scam pumps are incoming. So moving into the perspectives, Dr. Profit says, you know, understand what others fail to understand. Education is the highest art of trading, and these are the real reasons for the crash. And he pretty much gives multiple perspectives based off of his Sunday report and exactly where he's looking to re-enter. But all you really need to know is that he is max shorting right now, expecting some pumps in the market, but overall breakdowns occurring multiple times. And also KillXBT is one of the individuals that is explaining that he believes that we're still going to be seeing a lot of breakdowns and that more likely we've already peaked. He says Bitcoin, just remember who was truly bearish, him and Dr. Profit. He says not the two scenario flip-flop like the rest of this app or influencers, Coles, perma bulls. He says see you at 70K, then 60K, then 50K. So he's expecting that more downward price action is going to be happening on a long time frame, but in the short time frame with, like I said, what the heat map was showing right here, as well as overall Ted's perspective, I'm sure we're going to be seeing a little bit of a pump before we start dumping again. Now, jumping into the perspectives from Benjamin Cohen, he's the one that has been keeping us updated with Bitcoin dominance. Everyone's calling him the savior of crypto, keeping us updated on exactly what we need to be aware of. And he goes on to say all sorts of narratives will circulate, but bear markets are normal. Bitcoin has always topped in Q4 of the post-halving year whenever, you know, Bitcoin has its halving, and then bottomed approximately 1 year later. Trade the market you have, not the market you want. So right now he's going on to say that at the end of the day, this was anticipated. And if you didn't anticipate this, it's just because you don't have as much experience. And I'll be straightforward with y'all guys. This is one of my first cycles, which is why I have my altcoin portfolio. I'm not capitulating my bags because more than likely liquidity is going to be shifting back into it. But at the end of the day, if you have been here for multiple cycles, this is something that is a pattern that technically, you know, happens multiple times. Everyone thought it was going to be much different this year, but at the end of the day, it's planning out to, you know, be exactly the way it has been in previous cycles. He's also been the individual to let us know that more than likely Ethereum is going to be bleeding against Bitcoin moving into December. This is something where we're keeping up with the 50-week simple moving average with Bitcoin, and if it could pretty much see a little bit of a correction, but at the end of the day, that was not the case, and I'm sure we're probably going to be seeing more deviations in the near future. Now, at the end of the day, the news events, and I keep saying at the end of the day, there's a lot of crazy things that cause fluctuations in the markets. Trump's tariffs, trade deals, war negotiations, Fed speaker movements, rate cuts, all these different things that are, you know, causing liquidity to shift is really crazy, or even cause sentiment around investor and investing. This is where a lot of people cause, you know, massive liquidations in the market because people do not want to hold their bags when there is massive uncertainty in the market. And honestly, moving into the weekend, this is why everyone's saying everything's either going to be trading sideways or we're going to be seeing a scam pump and then it's going to dump. But overall, that's pretty much straightforward what is going on. Markets are trading sideways. We saw some key news events happen this week, which is why we saw most of the volatility that we saw in the markets. Now, with the weekend hitting, like I said, we're expecting some scam pumps potentially with the heat map showing that we have some liquidations for short sitting at around that 86,000 region. Today, what am I doing? I'm targeting that 86,000 region and that 83,000 region, potentially going to be longing and then shorting so that I can, you know, just play this wave in the markets. In terms of altcoins, guys, we're not going to be seeing altcoin season start anytime soon until Bitcoin has somewhat of a slight recovery, somewhat give that liquidity into Ethereum, and then potentially completely shuffle all of that liquidity out of Bitcoin back into Ethereum and altcoins moving into 2026. But most people are not patient. They want everything to start already in December whenever quantitative tightening is already going to stop apparently. But more than likely, it's going to still be taking some time. And if you have an altcoin portfolio like myself, you are down significantly. And one of the worst decisions you can make is selling right now while everyone else is, accumulating. So if you're new to my channel, please go check out the rest of my content. I try to keep you updated on the day-to-day events, price action around Bitcoin, Ethereum, altcoins, how liquidity is shifting, and everything you need to be aware of. Right now, expect somewhat of sideways price action over the weekend. If you guys have any questions or suggestions, drop them down below. I'm gonna let you guys know exactly what I am doing as a crypto investor and trader. Like how I said, day trading specific zones and also accumulating specific altcoins. All right, I'll catch you guys in the next one. Stay tuned. I'll see you then. Peace.